If you have endured more than most people know, if you have worked hard for years without receiving the results you expected, if you have watched others move ahead while your own efforts seem delayed, then listen carefully. Because this message is not for everyone. It is for those who have already carried the weight. The people who continued when motivation disappeared. The people who remained standing after disappointments that nobody else saw. The people who kept trying even after questioning whether life was ever going to reward their efforts. And perhaps the strangest part is this: lately, something feels different. The problems may still be there, the responsibilities may still be there, the uncertainty may still be there, yet something inside you no longer responds the same way. You are becoming quieter, more observant, more detached from things that once consumed your attention. People are changing, relationships are changing, your priorities are changing, and you may not fully understand why. What if these are not random events? What if these are the final adjustments life makes before opening a new chapter? Because success rarely arrives the way people imagine. Most people expect success to appear suddenly, dramatically, all at once. But lasting success usually begins quietly. It begins with clarity. It begins with separation. It begins with difficult realizations. It begins with the removal of people, habits, beliefs, and distractions that no longer belong in your future. And that is why many people mistake the beginning of success for the continuation of struggle. They see relationships fading, they see delays, they see pressure, they see uncertainty, and they assume life is moving against them. When in reality, life may be positioning them for something larger than they expected. Not an overnight miracle, not a sudden escape from all problems, but a stable, satisfying, steadily growing success that arrives after years of preparation. The kind of success that remains because you have become capable of carrying it. And if you have reached this stage of your journey, there are signs. Signs that the waiting period is nearing its end. Signs that life is preparing to reward what it has spent years building inside you. One of the first signs is that you begin seeing people differently. The people around you do not necessarily change overnight. Rather, your perception changes. You begin noticing things that were always there. Some people praise your abilities, but the moment you decide to pursue a bigger opportunity, they begin highlighting every risk. They tell you what could go wrong. They remind you of every obstacle. They magnify every drawback. At first, you may believe that they are protecting you, and perhaps some genuinely are, but not everyone who discourages your growth is concerned about your well being. Some people want you to succeed, but only to a certain point. They want you to progress, but not enough to outgrow them. They want to see you rise, but not so high that it forces them to confront their own limitations. Others may not even realize they are holding you back. They distract you. They pull your attention away from your purpose. They consume the energy that should have been invested into your future. And this is why awareness becomes so important. Because when your direction becomes clearer, distractions become more obvious. You stop trying to convince everyone. You stop explaining every dream. You stop defending every decision. You begin saving your energy for what truly matters. And strangely enough, some relationships begin fading away. People become distant. Old friendships lose their meaning. Certain connections no longer feel alive. At first, this can be painful. After all, endings rarely feel comfortable. But every meaningful transformation requires space. Life often removes what no longer belongs to your future before it introduces what does. Many people interpret this stage as bad luck. They think life is taking things away from them. In reality, life may simply be clearing the road ahead. When an old journey breaks apart, a new path begins to emerge. Another sign appears through pressure. Often, just before a breakthrough, life places a person under unusual pressure. Money feels stuck, expenses increase, rewards seem smaller than the effort invested, the future feels uncertain. Some begin questioning themselves, others begin doubting whether their sacrifices were worth it. Yet, what if this pressure is not punishment? What if it is preparation? You cannot receive greater responsibility without developing greater capacity. Patience must be built. Discipline must be built. Self confidence must be built. Resilience must be built. There may have been moments when you felt that everything was working against you, but perhaps life was not trying to stop you. Perhaps it was trying to strengthen you, because temporary success requires talent. Lasting success requires character. Anyone can enjoy a victory. Few people can carry one without being destroyed by it. This is why some people receive success quickly and lose it just as quickly. Others are forced to struggle for years before their opportunity arrives. The delay itself becomes part of the preparation. The struggle teaches them the value of what they eventually receive. It teaches patience, humility, gratitude, responsibility. And these lessons become the foundation of everything that follows. There is another sign many people overlook. You begin trusting your own voice more than the opinion of others. For years, you may have tried to keep everyone happy. You may have sacrificed your own dreams to avoid disappointing someone else. You may have ignored your intuition because you wanted approval. You may have suppressed the voice of your own soul simply because you did not want anyone to be unhappy. But eventually, life teaches a different lesson. If you do not respect your own path, nobody else will. If you constantly abandon yourself for the comfort of others, you slowly lose connection with who you really are. Success often begins when you stop living according to other people's expectations. Not because you become selfish, but because you become honest. You begin choosing your direction instead of waiting for permission. You begin listening to your inner voice instead of loudest voice in the room. And this creates an internal battle. One voice encourages growth, the other whispers fear. One voice says that something greater is possible, the other insists that you remain inside familiar boundaries. Every person hears both voices. The difference is simple. Some surrender to fear, others move forward despite it. And those who move forward discover something remarkable. Fear is rarely the wall, fear is usually the doorway. Beyond it lies the growth they were searching for all along. Then comes one of the strangest signs. The opportunities begin arriving quietly, not through miracles, not through dramatic events, but through ordinary moments. A conversation, a connection, a proposal, an idea, a forgotten project suddenly returning with new value. At first glance, these moments seem insignificant, yet later they reveal themselves as turning points. Many people miss these opportunities because they are waiting for something larger. They expect success to arrive dressed as certainty. Instead, it arrives as possibility, and possibility requires courage. But there is also a warning. When your breakthrough approaches, shortcuts often appear, temptations appear, promises of easy rewards appear, opportunities that seem too good to be true begin calling for your attention. This is where wisdom becomes essential. Anything that grows too fast can disappear just as quickly. What builds slowly tends to build deeply, and what builds deeply tends to last. Trust what develops through effort. Trust what develops through patience. Trust what develops through genuine value. Because stable success is not created overnight, it is built day by day, decision by decision, layer by layer. And perhaps the people most likely to understand these words are not those who have never suffered. They are the people who have endured everything. The people who carried disappointments for years. The people who gave more than they received. The people who remained faithful to their efforts even when nobody applauded them. The people who reached the climax of suffering and discovered something unexpected. They discovered that life was not only teaching them how to achieve, it was teaching them how to let go. Let go of people who no longer belong in their future. Let go of the need for constant validation. Let go of old identities. Let go of fear. Let go of desperate attachment to outcomes. And strangely enough, that is when everything begins to change. Perhaps this message found you at a moment when you needed to hear it. Not because the universe is sending magical signals, but because life often places certain thoughts before us when we are finally ready to understand them. If these words resonate with you, perhaps it is because you have already lived through the phase that breaks most people. You have endured delays, you have endured disappointments, you have endured misunderstandings. You have continued moving when there was little evidence that your efforts would be rewarded, and yet you are still here. That matters more than you realize, because life does not usually prepare a person so intensely without purpose. Why would patience be tested so many times if patience were not about to become valuable? Why would resilience be strengthened repeatedly if greater responsibility were not approaching? Why would life spend years teaching you discipline, endurance, and self belief if there were nothing ahead that required those qualities? The people who receive lasting success are rarely those who simply wanted it. They are the people who became capable of carrying it. And perhaps that is what has been happening all along. You thought life was delaying your reward. Maybe life was enlarging it. You thought life was denying your progress. Maybe life was preparing a foundation strong enough to support it. Because the greatest success rarely begin with noise. They begin quietly. A small opportunity, a new connection, a simple conversation, a project that appears insignificant at first. The beginning may not look impressive, but the direction will be undeniable. And the strange thing is that when this chapter begins, you may not even feel the excitement you once imagined. You will feel something deeper: certainty, peace, readiness, because after years of struggle, you no longer need success to prove your worth. You simply recognize that the time has come to receive the results of what you have become. One of the strange signs that success is approaching is that life becomes quieter, not louder. The applause hasn't arrived yet. The rewards are still invisible. But inside you, something has changed. You no longer chase every distraction. You no longer need constant validation. The person who desperately wanted success begins to disappear, and the person capable of handling success begins to emerge. And perhaps that is why success is closer than it has ever been before.